Let's get Brian Lawlor, the president of Scripps Sports, on the show. Brian, you are traveling. It is amazing that you are making time for us.
I know you take that as a compliment, but I'm 4 hours delayed, so it's not that amazing. I could have done this all day.
So you look like you're in a very hip place. Tell us where you're at. Where are you?
Yeah, this is the Cincinnati airport. I found some open gate where it's quieter. So, yeah, not that hip.
4 hours is a bummer. I'm sorry to hear that. But you're here. And I guess the word is you're here to celebrate. Like, I don't know how you are doing what you are doing, but you came on this show several months ago and talked about that you had ideas and you had concepts. And I know you just did a deal with the Golden Knights, but I want to talk about this WNBA deal. Yeah. Because I think that's the deal that changed the game completely. Talk me through the mechanics of that, and why does a deal with the WNBA make sense for Scripps Sports?
Well, look, when we chatted a couple of months ago, we kind of shared with you that we had spent the last really year looking at the sports space. Obviously, we're a big broadcaster. We own 8 different networks, Ion being the largest of which, and then, 61 different local TV stations. But, we kept reading the tea leaves of sports. I mean, it's the biggest driver of television viewing. So, more and more we see that it's hard to move the needle with programming, not a lot of dramas, comedies, really sort of latch on. But sports, anytime there's live sports and good live sports, audience explodes. A lot of advertisers want to support live sports. And so, we kept seeing that. And then we also saw just the changes in the ecosystem. And, forget about the fact that, Bally's was in financial trouble and AT&T, obviously followed suit in trying to get out of the business. But the reality was that business model was totally broken. And every time we would talk to a team or talk to a league, they just kept saying their biggest problem is reach. That 20 years ago, when they were doing deals with regional sports networks, they reached 80% of the households in their markets. But as people have cut the cord, or people never even signed on, for a cable or satellite system, the number keeps dropping dramatically. And so, meeting with the Golden Knights, a couple of months ago and getting that deal done, they reached 35% of all the households in Las Vegas. And of course, they have the geographic rights to get into other markets. So, and in Salt Lake City is a market where they have the rights to distribute. They're in 9% of the households. So, how are you going to be successful as a sports franchise if even in your home market, you're only reaching 1 in 3 households? There's a lot of people who just never, click in channels, stumble onto your games, and therefore never become fans. So, that just told us the time was right. And, once we sort of went public and said, hey, we see what's happening and we can be a solution. I'm 5 months into this thing. I've yet to make a phone call. Our phones have been ringing off the hook. We now have, 2 deals announced. And you asked about the WNBA. Look, we believe strongly in the future of women's sports. In fact, when we started modeling out whether we would, stand up a division inside the company and go after sports, one of the things that we modeled out was women's sports. And a lot of the other sports have big loyal followings, but they didn't have a lot of growth to them. You probably, may be able to maintain or grow 1 or 2 or 3% a year. But we looked at a couple of the women's sports franchises and we said, this has some significant upward mobility, and we'd rather be part of building something and growing it. And so right from the beginning, a conversation with the WNBA was one of our priorities. And fortunately, even though they have some deals, like regional sports deals, and then they've got deals with ESPN and a couple others, there was an opportunity to put together a package. And so for the next 3 years until all their rights come together at once. So anyway, we started talking to them, and they clearly had interest in Ion. They've got a deal with Ion, with ESPN and some other places. But again, it's that same limited distribution of cable and satellite, or in some cases even less than that. And so the idea of getting onto a national broadcast network that's on cable, it's on satellite, we're on all the virtual cable systems like YouTube TV and others. We're actually on the fast services like Roku and platforms like that. And then we're over the air. The reality is we can reach almost every U.S. household. And so, to give them that kind of reach, at a time when their league's gaining traction and popularity. And then they've never had a franchise before where people would actually know where to find them. At ESPN, it's nice they have a package with them, but it's Wednesday at 9, it's Tuesday at midnight, it's Saturday at noon. The ability for us to develop for them a franchise night, Friday nights, every Friday, 15 straight weeks, a single game many weeks or a double game, East Coast, West Coast, and the commitment that we will broadcast every game. So we'll, like the NFL does on a Sunday afternoon, there's a national game, but also can locally insert regional games. We're doing exactly the same thing. And so I think they're thrilled. This is a great, distribution platform for them, terrific visibility. Look, it's our first sports franchise on Ion, so we're going to go all in. We're going to promote the heck out of this thing. We're going to make this thing, really their defining night. And the fact that, people will be able to stumble onto it. And the fact that they'll know where to find it every Friday on the same channel. I think they're really pleased, and we're ecstatic about it.
So how do you produce those games? Like, I'm really interested in I don't want to step on your toes, and if you can't answer, hey, great. But do you guys produce those games? Like, what is the actual mechanics of putting, like, specifically in the WNBA, like, what are the mechanics of putting those games on television for you guys?
Yeah, this deal, because of just the timing of everything and when we were able to get to it, I think when we finally announced the deal, which was 2 weeks ago yesterday, we only had 5 weeks till opening tip. So, we're not going to be able to stand up, production in 5 weeks that, again, we have every game on Friday night. So there's 12 teams in the league, and there's a couple of weeks where every team's playing on a Friday night. So for us to stand up 6 different crews to be in all the different places. So, right now the WNBA is going to continue the production. So they have teams, home and away teams that do all their production. And so at least for the first season, our plan is to use the NBA produced games. They've got a terrific production company in Rush Media who does 11 of their 12 teams, and we know those guys well. They do an excellent job. We'll add a little bit of our own touch to it in terms of look and all, but with 5 weeks, why start messing with something? We'd rather just really focus on the distribution, the revenue, and doing it right, and for the customers and advertisers we bring in, really serving them, rather than spending all of our time trying to stand up production. So, it's a multi-year deal. We'll be able to worry about how we want to advance that moving forward. But right now, rather than wait a season, let's use what exists. And it's really good anyway. And then let's get it out there and start to, showcase these great athletes.
You talk, Brian, about reach, and I think that word is underutilized because we hear about these deals, especially in college, right? With this Pac-12 situation, and everybody wants that Big Ten deal, the $100 million a year, and when you look at the economics of doing a deal on a network basis versus a localized, like the Golden Knights deal, because for us, like, look, I'm based in Utah. Like, that's a huge deal for us. This is an untapped hockey town, frankly, in Salt Lake City. I'm in an arena that hosts the only professional hockey team in this town right now, right? So the question that I ask is, what are the economics of reach? Because obviously for the Knights, it works quite well. So when you look at the money and you look at the reach, how does Scripps Sports win in a deal that seems like, hey, that's a no-brainer for the Golden Knights? Why is it a no-brainer for Scripps Sports?
We're really changing the whole discussion on the economics. Look, the old model's broken. The teams were getting paid a lot of money, and yet they weren't, they were down to reaching a third of their audience. So they like the money, but at the end of the day, they're not building fans. And, we've been engaged in a bunch of conversations so far with teams, and everybody from the beginning understands that, comes to us and says, we have a reach. And we just say, look, we're not interested in coming in and just paying for your rights, and we're not going to pay you what you used to be paid. Look, your old provider is either out of business, bankrupt, or not going to pay you what they were paying you. So that doesn't work. So let's talk about, are you interested in a partnership? Look, we will write you a right. We will pay a fee to be your partner. It's not going to be what you used to get, but and let's model out the value of going from reaching a third of your audience to 100% of your potential audience. So number one, can we double or triple the ratings of the games? What does that mean? We can bring in a lot more advertising revenue, higher sponsorships, so sponsorships are worth more. So there's a enhanced revenue stream there. If you're reaching 100% of your audience, now ticket sales, right? You can drive more ticket sales. You can sell a lot more merchandise. In states with sports betting, now more people are more engaged, so they're betting on your team more, and teams get some cut of the action on that. And so there's all new revenue streams. We can partner and create a direct-to-consumer platform that might have second audio streams or guest, think of like the Manning cast and stuff like that. But also you own all that data. So you get all the data about your fan and the ability to own your fan. And so our conversation is, hey, look, we're not going to pay what the last guy did because that doesn't work anymore. But if you can, increase your advertising revenue through more eyeballs, if you can put more butts in the seats in the arena, if you can sell more merchandise, if you can get more sports betting, what does that add up? Does that get you whole? Does that make you more on direct to consumer? What other revenue stream can be created there? And you get all that data that you own your fan. What can you do with that? So I think, look, the Golden Knights totally got that. And by the way, they were comfortable from the beginning in the very first meeting. So we know we're not going to get what we were getting, but reaching 100% of our fans on free over the air is more important to us than, a couple of $1 million. And they remained consistent through that, through all of our conversations. Their goal was always, let's put this product in front of everybody. And by the way, not just, inside of Vegas. They want to get, the product out to Montana, to Wyoming, to where you guys are. And look, and even when we start talking to them about direct to consumer, there probably was a business model to build something that could, create a couple $1 million. We're going to create a direct to consumer, but they said, hey, whatever we put in over the air, which is free and over the air, it's going to be free on our direct to consumer. We want everyone to be able to see our games, no charge. I've never seen a team so committed to just being there for their fans. It was incredible. And, but you can see, we're thinking about the economics totally different as a partnership, and let's go all in those things and let's share in the upside. There doesn't have to be a winner or a loser. The problem right now is there is a winner and a loser. Teams won with the rights they were getting, but it broke the model of the RSNs, and now nobody's winning.
And the reason I bring that up, Brian, is because I talk about new revenue streams all the time, and I think when you're having conversations about, like you talk about in-game parlays and the explosion of that metric in gambling and wagering, like I think those creative models, I feel like that should be a core part of your business. That can be something in my mind that no matter what level you're at with the proliferation of and I don't want to say cord cutting, because I know that a lot of people are finding, for instance, ESPN in many different places, right? But for you guys, when you look at your value to somebody like a local franchise, a Las Vegas Golden Knights, when you talk about direct to consumer, does Scripps Sports Ion offer like a stream? Am I going to be able to watch Golden Knights, WNBA? Am I going to be able to watch that on my phone?
Yeah, that's the plan. That's our plan. Certainly with the Golden Knights, we announced that we'll be working together on a direct to consumer. And again, for what you see on broadcast, we'll put the same thing on direct to consumer, and there'll be no charge. And so, look, as I said, they're all about just putting their product in front of the fans. And when you think about, in Las Vegas, it's 3 hours different from the East Coast. Well, when the Golden Knights are out playing, the Islanders or the Capitals or somebody on the East Coast, if it's a 7 o'clock East Coast game, it's a 4 or a 5 o'clock game in Vegas. Well, people got to take their kids to soccer practice, right? And now you got parents who are sitting in their car, sitting on the sideline of watching soccer practice that are missing, their game. We will be offering an app that we'll co-own and co-develop with the Golden Knights, where people can sit on the sideline while their kids practicing soccer, and they can catch the first 2 periods of the game. and then they get in and walk in the house and they immediately put it on the TV. And you've created this complete fan engagement where they're all in, and you're making it easy for them, and they don't have to pay extra. They don't need a subscription. They don't need, a cable services. And so I think you're going to find really deep fan engagement as this transition happens, because right now the RSNs, they don't allow the teams to be able to offer that. They're trying to control that. So I think, again, there's a shift that's beginning, and we're really excited to be part of it. I mean, in the last 2 weeks, there's been 3 new distribution deals announced. Us and Ion, us and WNBA on Ion, free over the air. Us and the Golden Knights, free over the air. And Gray and the Phoenix Suns, free over the air. This is the beginning of a movement that's going to change sports.
Let's talk about ad inventory real quick, too. And I don't want to get too much into the business because it's probably minutia for a lot of people. But my mind immediately goes to, how do you guys divide that ad inventory? Does that belong to the team? Do you guys get a piece of that? How does ad sales in this local model work for you guys?
Yeah, look, as I'm learning, every deal is different. And so as each deal gets announced, the economics look different. The business relationship looks different. In some cases, the RSN was selling all the inventory in the games. In some cases, the teams actually owned and controlled all the inventory in the games. And in some cases, it's a hybrid. So, I can tell you for the Golden Knights, we will have all of the inventory in the games. And, so we'll be, selling all the commercial time, selling all the advertising, the sponsorships, some of the virtual stuff you see, on the ice and on the glass. We'll have the right to sell all of that. So, and quite frankly, in our business model, that's how we have to pay for it. We don't get the distribution revenue from the cable and satellite systems that was reliant, and that was the business model, this arbitrage model that sort of ran the RSN business, and that's broken. So for us, it's really about having the ad inventory to be able to sell, and that's how that justifies us, paying a rights fee.
That's awesome. So, the other thing that comes to mind is here also in Salt Lake City, the Utah Jazz are looking for a TV partner. How invested in NBA are you guys? Is it simply a matter of, are you going to play in the professional sports pond? Because I've asked you previously about the Pac-12. Are you guys open to all sports? Like, what is the ideal partner for you guys at Scripps Sports?
Yeah, look, I think when we started, and the last time you and I chatted, I said, we're just going to start with professional sports at this point. We want to lay in a couple of foundational partners from the beginning to see what the mindset is, to understand each of the leagues and teams and see how they're thinking about business, and could in fact this new business model of partnership and sharing in the upside actually work. Well, it's working. And so we've got a real nice deal now with the WNBA, and of course that's run by the NBA, so we've gotten to know those folks really well. We've got a great partnership now with the Golden Knights, and I got to tell you, we love their ownership and leadership. Just first class, really excellent people. But we got to know the folks at the NHL office, and obviously the commissioner had to sign off on this deal, and this is a totally different deal, the first broadcast over the air deal. And so I think that the NHL had to look at things a little bit differently and make sure they were comfortable with the direction. And at the end they said, where else can we do this? They really like the idea of putting the product in front of all their fans. So, we are definitely interested in, we're looking at all the sports. I mean, the NFL's sort of off the table, right? They got an 11-year deal that's just starting. So there's not going to be rights up anytime soon. But, soccer, baseball, basketball, hockey, we're talking with all of them. And our first goal is, trying to lay in some of these professional rights. We definitely would look at college. We have a lot of interest in especially women's sports in college. I think there's, again, a big upside. It deserves to be exposed. Women's gymnastics is terrific. Women's volleyball is terrific. Softball, heck, women's softball World Series on ESPN rated higher than the men's baseball college World Series. So there's a lot of interest in that. And so we'll find that balance. But I think we're 2 deals announced here, and I think we got a couple more to go in the next 3 or 4 months that we'll announce. And then I think we'll look at, okay, now that we know who we are, and especially like Ion, we'll know what maybe 1 or 2 assets we have there, what shoulder programming, what other stuff complements, where do we want to go. But I would say, we're definitely going to keep looking in the professional space. There'll be some college space, and then there's a lot of other stuff out there. Some of it's interesting, some of it's goofy. But then also, the stuff that we get into, we want to tell stories. And so we're going to create a lot of programming around, who are the athletes and what are they about? And how do we make them more well-known and make the sports about a lifestyle versus just what happens whistle to whistle.
Have you spoken to the Utah Jazz about their TV deal?
I have no comment.
My guy. I love it. And hey, anything you want to add on the Pac-12, because we've heard so much. Have you guys spoken to the Pac-12 at all anytime recently?
We haven't. You
have not. Well, hey, what you have done is spectacular, and I appreciate that you're always so willing to come on, even when you're sitting at the airport, like about to, in moments, hop on your flight in 4 hours.
You guys kept me from grabbing a beer 2 hours ago, so now that I'm done with this, I can't wait to get a cold beer while I sit here another hour. So
yeah, and by the way, bummer on the New York Rangers, right? As a hockey guy, I know you're a Ranger fan.
No, I'm an Islander fan. I was so happy.
Oh, you're an Islander fan.
Beat the Rangers. Yeah, I mean, my Islanders lost. That makes it sad. But when the Rangers lose, the world gets better. So
that's great. Brian, always good to see you. Congratulations, man. I'm really happy for you guys. And thanks for coming on the show. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Anytime. Have a great weekend, guys.
You too. There's Brian Lawlor, the president of Scripps Sports. Just I think a really good conversation. I told you last time we talked about Scripps, those guys are doing it right. And I think if you're just tuning in, again, we've been talking about this because I think like in our local market here in Salt Lake City, for those of you that are not here, I don't know how Ryan Smith and Scripps Sports have not had a conversation. I mean, certainly they must have. We have asked the Jazz for comment. They have not replied to that. But I mean, I look at this deal with the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and I'm telling you, that's the future of television. For in local markets, and I don't know what you. Obviously, I'm not trying to talk for you, Jake, but I think that the idea that Scripps Sports is going to sell, and maybe that's the news, the nugget there. Scripps Sports is going to sell all the inventory for the Las Vegas Golden Knights. So the Golden Knights are creating new revenue sources. They're going to be distributed in 4 states, including Nevada and Utah. Like, they're growing new fans. And as hot as that property is, the idea that the Las Vegas Golden Knights are not going to be exposed to the state of Utah and the hockey, and this is, whether you believe it or not, Utah is a hockey town. This is a hockey state. I feel like there is no way that that's not a win.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, when you look at what he was talking about with the consumer's experience, I think that's what excites me most about what Brian had to say there. Like, you think about, the conversation we've had before, and seemingly every time we talk about the streaming setup versus linear, like, everyone always says, hey, like, it's difficult to, like, if you take the Jazz, for example, hey, it's difficult to find the Jazz if you're not a DirecTV customer.
That's
and
right.
I think when you hear Brian talk about, the consumer experience of, hey, like, if you're in Vegas and it's an East Coast game and you got to handle the kids and then you get home and, like, I think they've taken into account real life circumstances. And I think that's what you have to do nowadays to really capture fans. I mean, the concept of getting maybe 30% of your fans versus potentially 100% of your fans because of the power of the cell phone, I think is what we as sports fans have been trumpeting for years now. I mean, how many times have you as a consumer felt like, oh man, like this is on or that's on and I'm not home because I'm doing X, Y, or Z. Maybe I'm on vacation, let's say, or whatever. I don't have the ability to flip on a TV right now. Can I get it on my phone? And now that they are developing an app to do that, I just think it's ideal for making money. It's ideal for growing your fan base, but ultimately, at the core of it, it's ideal for growing the Golden Knights brand. And that's what I think we can't forget. Like, whether we're talking Pac-12 or NHL hockey or whatever the sport is, again, these hockey clubs, they might play hockey, but they're sales companies, dude. The organization only stays afloat by selling and advertising and doing deals. Like, yeah, sure, there's built-in money because these guys are billionaires, but you get my point. To be profitable and to be run the correct way, you got to make money. And that's not unique to the NHL. So to me, if you can make the consumer's experience easy, you're just paving the way, bro. You are paving the way for big viewership number, or at least bigger than what it was, which ultimately leads to what? More advertisers in the local community spending their hard-earned dollar on your product, and that's what you need.
Such as in like Bucked Up Energy, a local business that supports the program. Bucked Up Energy, the official energy drink of the Monty Show. And you guys, again, we were off yesterday because the building was absolutely packed. So we went and played some golf. And what did we take along with us? Bucked Up Buckshots. I got to tell you, my favorite flavor is the watermelon. Jake, you had what'd you have, the Raz yesterday?
Blood Raz.
Blood Raz
Bomb.
yesterday. It was really
Bomb.
good. And you know what the cool thing about the Buckshots are is that you feel an instant lift. And there's no crash. It's really good. It's all day, high-powered, clean energy to get you through your afternoons, to get you through your tough mornings. Hook it up in the description below on this YouTube show, or if you're listening on our podcast, bless you on Spotify. Go ahead and click the link into the description. It says free Buckshot samples. You get 6 of them. You're looking at it right there. You can pick any flavors you want. I love the watermelon, you guys. Huge fan. Hook it up. They'll send them right to your house for free. Bucked Up, the official energy provider of the Monty Show. Get the free samples in the description below. Let's get your thoughts on this interview and what you guys think about this, because obviously the bigger story here is the Pac-12 is not going to get a mega deal here. I don't think there's any doubt. I talked to one of my sources at ESPN this morning who said nothing's changed. We are not buying tier 1 rights. Our number for the Pac-12 is $90 million a year, period. 5-year deal, as we told you first on this show.
Yeah.
They're talking about a 5-year deal. And Amazon is out. We were told directly today that Amazon is no longer competing for Pac-12 rights at this point, which I think is a huge, huge upgrade or update. Boy, you take a day off and you come back rusty.
Hey, man, it is what it is, bro.
Amazon is out. I think that's a huge update on this story.
Yeah.
I think this is really coming down to NBC Universal and Peacock.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a guy about NBC Universal, our original source on that, and he was telling me that there is a framework of a deal in place with the Pac-12 and NBC Universal. The issue becomes, where does that number 1 game of the week go? Because NBC already has Big Ten After Dark. Because remember, that deal doesn't start this year. This year, Pac-12 sports, this coming football season in the fall, Pac-12 football is going to be on Fox and ESPN. So you don't have a need this year.
Yeah.
But what happens in 2 years is you're going to have USC and Ohio State in the late window.
Yes.
So where does NBC put that? Because ultimately in the Pac-12, I think we've established this for a very long time. The chancellors and presidents in this league are not going to accept a full streaming deal, and they don't want their best marquee game on stream only. So the question is, if you're NBC Universal, is that number 1 game going on USA Network? I would think that it would. And the question is, if you're not going to get $400 million a year, because the number I've heard about NBC Universal is $200 million a year on an all-in package.
Right.
Basketball, football, and streaming.
Right.
$200 million. That's $20 million a year. I'll go back to what we've heard from our sources in the Pac-12 who said to lock this league up and keep all 10 teams in place, it's got to be $25 million. Well, that's not going to get a deal done.
Mm-hmm.
Can you get 10 chancellors and presidents to sign a grant of rights at $20 million a year?
Obviously not.
I think that's going to be a real challenge.
Yeah. No,
I think that's going to be tough.
And I think what's really interesting is, like, when you talk to guys like Brian Lawlor, you start to understand that guys who are in the industry really understand all the details and understand, what the consumer wants. And the more and more we have these conversations on the show, and the more that I hear guys like Brian talk about their business, I start to understand, and it becomes very clear, even more clear than it's been, that I don't feel like George Kliavkoff understands the consumer. I don't feel like George understands like what the consumers had to go through, being that the Pac-12, TV deal or Pac-12 network is only on Dish Network. It's not on DirecTV, or like, the fact that there's not a great way to find it through an app, like, all this stuff that it just doesn't seem like you quite understand, because if you did understand that, we wouldn't be sitting here. And I think that's the challenging part. And really, it's the part that concerns me, because if the Pac-12 doesn't understand that, or maybe doesn't have as strong a grip on it as they need to, what kind of deal are you going to put together? And that's why it brings me right back to the point you just made. How in the hell are you going to get these people, the 10 schools, to agree to a grant of rights in this setup? I just don't see how you get there right now.
But I look at the Golden Knights deal with Scripps Sports. They're not just in Nevada or Las Vegas. Again, you're Idaho, Montana, Utah, and Nevada.
Yeah.
That's 4 states. If I'm Utah, the University of Utah, and I can broadcast my games in Nevada, Montana, Idaho, Utah, obviously, Colorado. If I can get the mountain region and I can get it localized and I can enter a sales arrangement, are you really telling me you don't believe that you can surpass $25 million a year on that? That's insane.